Hello, everyone. It's been another year in this life, and this year I wanted to share with you my favorite horror films from each year I have been alive. That's right, my favorite horror film from every year I have been alive. Again, you can check out my favorite movies, favorite comic book films, and favorite sci-fi films up on the channel. And before I continue, feel free to share your favorite horror films from every year you've been alive down in the comments below. Starting with 1991 is Silence of the Lambs. I have a special relationship with this movie because this film opened and was #1 on the box office on my birthday. I can't help but feel indirectly attached to this movie. But what can I say? It's a wonderful sequel to Michael Mann's Manhunter. And we have Anthony Hopkins as the villainous Hannibal Lecter. Want to eat your liver with some fava beans. You know, he's just so frightening in the limited screen time. You also have Buffalo Bill. Yeah, the chief on Monk. Yeah, he plays a creepy cannibalistic serial killer in this. But we also have Clarice, played by Jodie Foster. She gives one of the best performances of her career. We also have Scott Glenn. This is a very intense suspense horror film. You know, you have Clarice as an FBI agent asking the help of this cannibal in order to track down a killer who is also a cannibalistic serial killer. Ooh, doesn't get any better than that, and it feels very grounded in reality. You know, there's nothing supernatural about this movie, and it's based on a wonderful series of books. Silence of the Lambs is as good as it gets. After that, for 1992, is Bram Stoker's Dracula. This Francis Ford Coppola film is one of my favorite versions of Dracula. I love Gary Oldman. I've crossed oceans of time to find you. Who could forget Winona Ryder as Mina? You also have Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker. I know where to bury the bastard, at Carfax Abbey. Anthony Hopkins, again, is great in this. He is Professor Abraham Van Helsing. I love him in this. You also have Cary Elwes, Richard Grant. So many actors in this movie. The practical effects are state-of-the-art. This is made like an old-fashioned film, and I love that they incorporated the real-life Vlad Tepes storyline into Bram Stoker's novel. This is a nice blend of old and new, and it's not for the faint of heart. This is one of the most cold-blooded, bloodiest Draculas, yet the most romantic Draculas that I recommend watching for Valentine's. Oddly enough, this is just one of my favorite horror films, and who knows what it would have been like with Johnny Depp as Jonathan Harker, but I like the film so far, and it's definitely my favorite horror film of 1992, and one of my favorite Dracula films, along with Bela Lugosi from 1931. After that, for 1993, my favorite horror film is Leprechaun. Leprechaun was a film that used to scare me to death younger. Now it's laughable. It's almost like a children's horror film, but I love Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun. That's right, Willow himself plays a leprechaun in this and many of the other sequels. And we also have Jennifer Aniston in an early movie. What can I say? This is like a guilty pleasure. I love this. It's a basic plot of them basically picking this clover, pissing off a leprechaun, and him just trying to kill this group of people. Like, that's a basic plot. It's your basic slasher horror film. And in the age of like Freddy Krueger, Jason, and now Chucky, Leprechaun joins the mix and gives us a Halloween film to watch for St. Patrick's Day. After that, for 1994, I have 3 films tied. I just could not decide. The first being Interview with a Vampire. This is the film that got me into vampires. It made me a vampire fan. Made the late, great Anne Rice rest in peace. She created the most definitive vampire tale since Bram Stoker's Dracula. Brad Pitt as Louis. You have Tom Cruise as the vampire Lestat. You have Christian Slater as David. You have Antonio Banderas as Armand. Kirsten Dunst as the girl Claudia. Stephen Ray is in this. So many actors, and this romanticizes the vampire tale while also providing some chills and thrills. And what can I say? It's actually cool seeing a story told through the perspective of the vampire. He can be every bit as monstrous as we think the vampire to be, but also is more of a tragic figure, and this film showed that. And not only romanticized the vampire, but also did not take anything away from the vampire or the vampiric lore, you know? He didn't glitter. These vampires still drink blood and kill people. After that is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This film is like the last action hero of horror films. I love this movie. This is a film I got into late after watching some of the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. Saw it on HBO. I was a huge fan of Wes Craven films and some of his books, and I absolutely love this film. This is a criminally underrated film. from Wes Craven, bringing Freddy Krueger out of the movie world into the real world, seeing Heather Langenkamp reprise Nancy, seeing the kid from Pet Sematary. Yeah, this movie is just a cool film for not only Freddy Krueger fans, but for horror fans, and was very meta before Scream got meta, you know? So it's nice seeing Wes Craven get meta before he worked on Scream, and this and Scream really changed the horror genre landscape, and basically it's when the genre started becoming self-aware. Lastly, for 1994 is Wolf. You have Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer, and James Spader. It's pretty much a spin on the Wolfman, or American Werewolf in London, practically. He gets bitten by a wolf. He starts having werewolf abilities. He fights with a bad guy. There's romance. This film has everything, and I absolutely recommend checking out Wolf. It's one of the coolest werewolf films out there. Again, another underrated film from 1994. After that, for 1995, I actually have Village of the Damned, but I have a soft spot for John Carpenter. Even when he's not at his best, I love this film. The kids creep me the hell out. They were creepy in the black and white version. They're just as creepy in this version. And we have Kirstie Alley and the late, great Christopher Reeve in this film. One of his last roles before his accident, and one of the few roles like outside Superman. You know, you have Somewhere in Time and in a lot of other movies. But this is a cool role that he's in, a very different type of role. I love the whole like mental block with like his mindset to try to like prevent the kids from taking over his mind. I love that sequence where he's battling his will against theirs. And what can I say? This is a cool like dystopian kind of like alien creepy horror movie where these kids just take over this small town. After that, for 1996, what's your favorite scary movie? It's Scream for me. Scream is one of my favorite horror films, and I actually did not like this film when it came out. I feel like you have to watch a lot of horror films in life to really love and appreciate this movie. It's not till in my teen to almost college years that I got heavily into Scream. I saw Scream 3, I loved that one, saw Scream, but I didn't fall in love with it. Probably until Scream 4 came out and I revisit them, and I'm like, I love this film series. But by that time, I already saw a bunch of horror films, so again, it's self-aware, it knows the rules, yet it follows them and breaks them at the same time. Kevin Williamson made such a wonderful script, and who knows, without Psycho or Halloween, we may never have had Scream. Wes Craven returns to form here. If you ask me, he never left his form, and he was an excellent filmmaker, and I miss the guy. Neve Campbell is one of the best final girls in film history as Sidney Prescott. You also have Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard. Yeah. This is just a fun movie. Jamie Kennedy. I love the horror movie rules explanation. I'll be right back. You know, you also have Rose McGowan in this film. So many memorable lines and parts, and what can I say? This is a classic that, while it had many sequels, this original film never gets old, and I could watch over and over and over for years. After that, in 1997 is a very unconventional choice with The Devil's Advocate. I love The Devil's Advocate. This is another underrated film, and especially from Keanu Reeves. He gives an underrated performance here, and Al Pacino steals the show as the devil, who's pretty much like Keanu Reeves' character's father. You have Charlize Theron. Yeah, every time Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron are together, it ends in tragedy between this and Sweet November. But what can I say? This is a cool film. Seeing Keanu Reeves as this hotshot lawyer with his new job, with his new boss, Al Pacino, figuring out he's like the devil. There's just so many great lines here, and yeah, it's not your conventional like slasher, supernatural horror movie in a way, but still, it's a pretty good horror movie, almost like a horror drama. And yeah, Vanity. What a sin, right? After that, in 1998 is The Faculty. I love this Robert Rodriguez film. You know, you have Josh Hartnett, Elijah Wood, Jordana Brewster, Clea Duvall. You also have Selma Hayek, Robert Patrick, Jon Stewart as teachers. Yeah, this is pretty much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in high school meets The Thing. It definitely has that John Carpenter vibe. I love this. You know, this is definitely in the Scream, I Don't Know What You Did Last Summer era, but this is one of my favorite movies, and I saw it one Halloween randomly, I think in 2003, and I fell in love with it. I'm like, this movie needs to be seen more and loved more. And it sucks that the creators just kind of try to dismiss this film because I think it's vastly underrated, and it's just one of my favorite horror films and definitely my favorite of 98. After that, for 1999 is The Blair Witch Project. This is a found footage film to start the found footage genre. This movie is amazing, and when this first came out, everybody, including me, thought this was real. Like, what? Holy crap. It's kind of a bummer that we figured out it was fake, but still, it was great nevertheless, and unlike the other movies that had a higher budget, this isn't made to be cheap. Like, yeah, they made it cheap, but it feels authentic. It actually feels like a real documentary. The other ones just do jump cuts and have random shaky cam for no reason at all. This worked within its budget, still had the original creators. The sequels are cash grabs, but this film is how you do a found footage movie. After that, in the year 2000, is American Psycho. Do you like Huey Lewis in the News? This film is a brilliant satire. Only a female director could have made this film. And Christian Bale, man. I love Christian Bale's Patrick Bateman. It's sadistic, it's brutal, yet it's funny. And it shouldn't be funny, but it is. You have Jared Leto, Willem Dafoe in this, Josh Lucas, Reese Witherspoon, before Sweet Home Alabama. Yeah, American Psycho, I love this movie. This is such a crazy satire, yet just like a thrilling, suspenseful, like serial killer movie that just messes with your head at the end. We're gonna have to watch it over again, like, whoa, what just happened? And you catch little details here and there. Christian Bale gives one of the performances of his career in this movie, and it's still iconic. Over 20 years later, I love American Psycho, the way I love Phil Collins. And yeah, what can I say? Every time I see it, I feel like I have to return some videotapes. After that, for 2001, is John Carpenter's Ghost of Mars. Yeah, one of John Carpenter's last films, but I love this. You have Natasha Henstridge, you have Ice Cube, Jason Statham, Pam Grier. The music, Steve Vai with like Anthrax, Buckethead, and John Carpenter. I love Fight Train and Kick-Ass, two of my favorite tracks. That dun 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 dun. You know, I love this movie, and I love it where like Ice Cube's is like, what's plan B? He's like, we should have done it in the first place, like, come on, and he's like fighting them all. Stuff is wrong with the settlement, and you find out ghosts have been unleashed and possessed people. So scary. Leaves it for a cliffhanger where you want to see a sequel, yet is that trademark of John Carpenter, like Big Trouble in Little China before it. I love it. This, I don't care if it's not The Thing or even The Fog, or They Live. I still love John Carpenter as a filmmaker, and Ghost of Mars ages like a fine wine like his other films. Ghost of Mars is one of my favorites. I wouldn't even call it a guilty pleasure. After that, for 2002, is 28 Days Later. Now, speaking of like the whole found footage, this brought horror into the digital age, and I love Cillian Murphy in this. Seeing this man wake up from a coma and see the world change around him in this zombie apocalypse in London. Holy shit, this film felt real. Yet, like the Dawn of the Dead remake and the Shaun of the Dead parody, basically moved the zombie genre forward into the 21st century and brought us a new breed of terror. After that is Final Destination 2. I love Final Destination, and the sequel is even bigger and better. Ali Lauder returns. You also have Liv Tyler in this. Yeah, you just cannot outrun death, and this was one of my favorite horror films of 2003. Like, holy crap, this movie was like so intense for me. That part with the vehicle on the highway, like, oh my god. Don't get me started. I love the first two Final Destination films, but the second one's definitely my favorite from that year, in addition to like Underworld. 2004 brings us Dawn of the Dead. This was the first Zack Snyder film I ever saw. It made me a fan of the filmmaker, and this is how you do a remake. You know, the original still stands on its own, and this stands on its own as well. It doesn't have to be compared to George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. This did something different, where both films can stand on their own. And I love how he made the zombies run, you know? They were scary in this. Ving Rhames was awesome in this movie. I love this movie, and James Gunn's writing with Zack Snyder's direction just creates a perfect combo for a zombie flick. And what can I say? If you needed to know what type of filmmaker Zack Snyder was, just watch this movie. You could see, even with a lower budget at an earlier stage in his career, you could see the talent behind that filmmaker. After that, in 2005, I have two films tied. The first being Red Eye, directed by Wes Craven. This isn't exactly like an intense horror film, but it's a perfect suspense thriller with Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams. I love how it's like 88 minutes, but takes place on the majority of this flight. It's such a fast movie. Starts off like a simple movie. You think it's gonna be like a rom-com, and then it turns to like a serious suspense film with twists and turns, political espionage, into that final confrontation that shows you Wes Craven at his best. Resembles the Scream films. Red Eye is just a blast and a surprise, and another underrated Wes Craven film. Another film I love is Hide and Seek with Dakota Fanning and Robert De Niro. Again, many twists and turns. You don't know what exactly is going on. His little girl is like crazy imagining stuff. But then Robert De Niro also gives one of his best performances in a thriller since Cape Fear. I love this. Seriously, check it out. You'll know what I'm talking about by the last 30 minutes of that movie. After that, in 2006, is Silent Hill. Silent Hill is not only one of my favorite horror films, it's probably one of my favorite video game adaptations. The original Silent Hill film was just a brutal film. Like a just gory, gruesome film, but that was also true to the video game, changing just a little bit, but still having the essence of the video game. And it was a lot more faithful than, say, some of the Resident Evil movies up to that point. I love this. Even if you've never played the video game, this film creates such a eerie, creepy atmosphere that it's going to stay with you for days. And the story and the twist behind the town just comes as a shock, and it's just so sickening yet satisfying at the end of that movie, where you're just like, wow, that was quite an experience watching this film and seeing what unfolded in the town of Silent Hill. And it always makes me want to listen to Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. After that is 30 Days a Night, vampires in Alaska, and it's nighttime. 30 days of nighttime in the snow, in the cold. All these vampires taking over this town. Yeah, these aren't the Twilight vamps. These aren't even the romanticized vamps. These vampires are here to fucking eat your heart out and kill you, and they're just terrifying. Not only a great film, but a great graphic novel adaptation as well. After that is The Strangers. I love The Strangers. You have Liv Tyler in this and Scott Speedman. I think that's right, yeah. I love The Strangers, you know. It's like a home invasion movie with so much more going on. And you're just like, wow, this is a horrible situation for these characters to be in, but it's such an intriguing film from beginning to end, and it was definitely my favorite horror film from that year. Definitely underrated and kind of overlooked now. After that, in 2009, is Orphan. Orphan was a mindfuck of a movie. Yeah, this couple adopts this little girl, and she's very malevolent. I thought she was possessed, but she's very malevolent. And then there's this twist version of like dwarfism, and this girl not really being a little girl, hitting on the father. It is just messed up. Yeah, I'm sorry if I spoiled the film for y'all, but like, yeah, this film stayed with me where I was just like, what the hell? That was one of the most mind-fucking endings I've ever seen in a horror film in recent years. 2010 is Insidious. Insidious is probably one of the most scariest PG-13 films I've ever seen in my life. James Wan knows how to create atmosphere and does timing very well for scares. Not just jump scares for the sake of it, he builds it up. It's not the house that's haunted, it's the kid, and they try to move and they're haunted. It's the people that are haunted. That is such a great twist, because in a lot of these movies like Poltergeist or Haunted House, like, they don't leave. Paranormal Activity, they don't leave. I'm like, leave the damn house. This couple did, and they figured out they were the ones that were haunted. Yeah, I like the sequels, but this first one will always be one of the most intense and scary PG-13 films for me. After that, in 2011, is Scream 4. Tell Sydney it's all because of her. Tell Sydney heads are gonna roll tonight. This was quite the film for Wes Craven to leave on. You know, this was his last film, and he goes out with a banger. One of the best Scream sequels. I love Emma Roberts as the villain Jill Roberts. You have Rory Culkin. The gang's all back. I love the twist and the commentary on remakes. Hayden Panettiere as Kirby. Man, this film has everything, and the use of a CGI knife makes it a bit more gritty and gorier than Scream 2 and 3. This definitely goes up there with the first film, and what can I say? Wes Craven, he really went out on a high here with this film, and I feel like the Scream series probably should have ended with this one. Sinister was probably the first R-rated horror movie to scare me. Probably the first horror movie to scare me as much as Nightmare on Elm Street did when I first saw it at 6 years old. Like, seriously, it was one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen, and it's all helped with Ethan Hawke's acting performance. Really gives the film some gravitas. The whole story behind him moving into this house, these like reels of film footage of these murders. Oh my god. This film is one of the most disturbing, scary horror films for me, and yeah, I haven't been this scared since Nightmare on Elm Street. This film made me feel like a little kid who was about to piss his pants. I had to sleep with the lights on. After that is VHS 2. I love the first VHS film, and the VHS 2 just kicks it up a notch with the shorts. Who could forget the GoPro zombie film, the cult film? Oh my god, so much crazy stuff. I love these short story found footage films and how like there's this subplot that interconnects them all. In many ways, it's like Outer Limits or Tales from the Crypt meets Blair Witch Project. That's what it is, and what can I say? One of my favorite found footage movies. After that is The Purge Anarchy. The Purge Anarchy is what the first Purge should have been, and I love the first Purge. This film takes it to the next level and actually shows us what the Purge is really all about. I love Frank Grillo in this. He's almost like the Punisher in this movie, but yeah. Seeing this chaos ensue for 12 hours in downtown Los Angeles, these group of people trying to survive, what can I say? There's a lot of social commentary, yeah, there's a lot of thrills and chills and some great action. What can I say? This is probably one of the best dystopian horror films of the 2010s, and Purge Anarchy, it has not gotten any better than this. You have all the sequels. The first one set up the world of the Purge, but this one really is the only one I think post-purge that's set up and delivered on all cylinders of what can happen during the purge. And this is one of my favorite movies. Very much like Assault on Precinct 13 meets Twisted Metal. After that, for 2015, is Insidious Chapter 3. I actually did not like Insidious 2 as much as 1. Insidious Chapter 3 was a nice surprise that somehow tied to the first but took place before the first. Completely different family. Dermot Mulroney's a single father. His daughter gets in an accident and is like paralyzed or like handicapped for most of the movie, seeing this ghost entity terrorize this young girl in an apartment complex. Change of formula, yet it does something original enough to where it stands on its own, and it's one of my favorite Insidious entries. Next is Train to Busan. This is how you do a zombie movie. I do not want to see a US remake of this. This is almost like a Resident Evil movie. Like seeing this zombie outbreak happen on a train, and then just when you think they're out of that, it's on the train stop and it's spreading everywhere. You have this single father who's taking his daughter for her birthday to see the mom. He's on the train to Busan. So much stuff happens. The fight for survival is so intense. Seeing these group of characters, seeing the group of characters get taken or eaten over by zombies is just insane. And then seeing their own government basically turn against them. This is zombie apocalypse at its finest and one of the best zombie films of the past 10 years. After that, at 2017, is The Babysitter. It's like, what if Home Alone and Die Hard were combined and it was like a rated R? That's what The Babysitter is like. I love this story. You know, Samara Weaving as a babysitter of Robert Mill. The young kid there starts off as a cute, innocent teen movie. This little kid has a crush on his babysitter, stays up one night and figures out she's friends with these other people in a devil cult, and they try to kill him. And he has to pretty much go Home Alone if it was rated R. Killing them, setting traps for them, trying to get out of it. This is such a zany, crazy movie, but I love it. It's like the most fun I had with a horror film in a long time. And yeah, what can I say? I enjoy this Netflix film. After that, in 2018, is Halloween. I love this requel. While I wish Halloween 2 is canon, I like how they brought it back to basics. John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis are now involved again. Seeing Laurie Strode 40 years later handle Michael not really being supernatural, at least not yet again. Seeing him brought back down to earth, seeing a new generation, this did something right. It felt more like the first film, and it wasn't one of those that just sidelined the original characters just so you could remake it with new characters. Like, no, this actually felt like a continuation of Halloween. You could watch Halloween 78 and then H40, as I like to call it, back to back. And what can I say? I love that final confrontation, and John Carpenter's score really adds to this film. Next in 2019 is Radar or Not. Yeah, another great Samara Weaving movie. You know, the directors of the new Scream did this film. This is a crazy-ass movie. Seeing this woman married, meeting the family, and the family trying to kill her on game night in a game of hide-and-seek mixed in with, like, a devil cult is just so insane. This film is one of the most unique and original horror films I've seen in a while, and yeah, I love it. Next up in 2020 is the remake of The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man, holy shit, did this movie surprise me. This is how you do a remake. No dark universe MCU type of connection. They just made a standalone film. Leigh Whannell just did an amazing job. Elizabeth Moss in this. So many intense moments that take you off guard where you're like, I can't believe this is actually happening. The way they explained The Invisible Man was so well done and really modernized it for the 21st century. And what can I say? This is a suspenseful, thrilling, intense film from start to finish. Again, another satisfying ending, but there's just moments where you're just like, I can't believe they went there, and it just keeps going and going and going, and it's just relentless. The Invisible Man is how you do a remake. Seriously. It's one of my favorite Universal horror remakes. Next in 2021 is Halloween Kills. There was a lot of horror films, but I loved how brutal Halloween Kills was. Michael Myers, even though he started off grounded in 2018, went back to being kind of a supernatural entity like the original Halloween sequels. And for better or worse, I liked it. Laurie was out of commission, but for people who complained about that, you don't remember her being in a hospital almost the whole movie of Halloween 2? Like, she just got stabbed with a knife. She's injured. This was like the Empire Strikes Back of the Halloween films. Seriously, that ending is so shocking, and seeing Michael Myers just become unstoppable and actually win in this one was just so intense. The kills were creative, yet just fucked up at the same time. What can I say? I love this movie. And even though it's almost like gory and kind of torture porn for some people, I like messed up stuff. And this is one of my favorite Halloween movies. And then after that, I would have to say this year, I haven't seen the new Scream. I want to. COVID was still bad in my area. The theater prices have went up. I'm going to wait till it's on Paramount Plus, but I really, really want to see it. I would have to say that Scream, if it doesn't disappoint me too terribly much, it's probably going to be my favorite horror film from this year. Definitely. So, yeah. Those are my favorite horror films from every year I've been alive. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, I'm going to enjoy my birthday, eat some cake, pick up some food, and yeah. Hopefully we're all older and wiser. Until then, I hope everyone out there stays blessed, stay safe and healthy out there. Check out these other videos for more awesome content. Till next time, everyone.